reparations would be something more than just money. You were talking about the land and so forth.
Right, exactly, exactly. Yeah, one of the, as mentioned a little earlier, one of the points that really concerns me is that just kind of like handing out money when it come close to actually subsidizing what we lost, like over the last say century or so as a result of the way in which they've taken our land, farmland to a large degree, and other parts of land that had a value at that point, but now would have been 10 times as much in terms of the money value. And as a consequence, that's a loss. We've gained nothing even by, like for example, if we had say like $1,000 in property, back then, that same property now in any state you go to is going to be worth 10, maybe 15 times that amount. And so what you actually gain as a result of those pennies in reparations that they gave you? When you think back at it, you lost. So you actually lost. So even if you did get it back, and so and then too, the other part of it is like the more so than just the money value of the land was like the pride that goes along with ownership and your ability, like to actually work your way in the economy as a result of the property. The property will provide you, with the kind of equity you need, like to build and grow. That's lost. See, the reparations not going to provide you anything there. Um, and then as far as the educational aspect of it, how can you gain, say, like a century worth of knowledge, and make that of value at this point? That's not there. It's not there because you didn't gain it. You didn't pass it along to your children. So reparations, okay. I mean, it's a good start, but I mean, like it shouldn't be the finish. You see, I mean, it should be the finish. So there's so many things, like I think when the study, and I'm sure, I hope anyway, that the studies, when they actually do the proper studies with regards to black people and reparations, they'll factor all those things in. The value of what is actually lost. See, it's not just money. Hey, yeah, there's not only like the experience, but the education, but the wisdom, and the actual power, like an authority that goes with all of that. And that's pretty much been kind of, in my opinion, just kind of like for years pushed under the rug. But anyway, so like I say, it's a start, and I look at it, in a way that it could be, in some cases, detrimental to black people and white people. White people think, well, okay, hey, we've done this, okay, everything's even now. But hey, it is not even. And black folk will take that money and they'll make good use of it, and some will, some won't. And but regardless of that, the money aspect of it is only a minimal part of what's really uh, owed relative to the deprivation that was created. And so, I'm leery about actually reparations from that standpoint. I think, in my opinion, everybody's going to look at that, including a lot of black people. Oh, hey, we got our money, so everything's okay. Well, no. See, that's just only part of it. Part of it. Like for example, another example is like my wife's great grandfather owned property there at McClellan Air Force Base. Now, I don't know whether indeed they actually paid him for that property or whether it was taken. That at this point I think is being researched and to see. But so many of those occasions, where property was stolen from black people simply by, okay, we can, so you will. So you guys get out of here and go on down the road, with nothing. And so, that's crazy. I mean, how many times that's been done, who knows? But I think some research should be done on that find out exactly, okay, in all the transfers, there were like large, significant groups of black people coming to California after the slavery. And I don't know, I think even prior to the end of slavery, there were black people here in California and other non-slave states. But for the time being, just thinking about those, that are here, is there's so many things that you can actually look at and try to put a value to it, and there's no value to it that you can put it, because you can't give like a century's worth of education of value. The person who benefited from centuries of education are those who are in power right now, who are in authority. And for those of us black people who are in certain positions, high positions, is because of struggle, heartache, and hard work, and through the grace of God.
Can I ask you a question? So,
Sure.
In terms of migrating here into California, I know, like my grandparents, when they came to California, like for example, my grandmother, she actually had to teach out in Stockton because they weren't hiring black teachers
Right.
here in Sacramento. So, kind of referencing more into the eminent domain, or actually segregation here in Sacramento, even though quote unquote this was a fair and free place for Californians.
Right.
I've heard stories from my elders saying that that actually wasn't the case. So can you explain kind of the segregation that was happening here at the time? I mean, like I guess the Reaganish era, before then, maybe like before this, around the 60s-ish, before actually the civil rights came, and how it was kind of hard for black people to move into these kind of more like, I guess you want to call them
Upper class neighborhood, this kind of thing.
let's just call it white neighborhoods.
Yeah.
How that, even in that case, was kind of a difficult process for black people.
Well, like to see, how in the last, say, like, say 10, 15, 20 years ago, how we were positioned, back then is really no different than how we're positioned right today, from the standpoint that the type of segregation that was imposed on black people had its beginning, like in slavery. And for those people who actually adopted, the white people who actually adopted the notion that slavery was fair and so forth, the same white people, that exist today. And not all, of course, obviously, but for the most part, that's the basis of all our laws and all of our ways of handling black people and other minorities, is based on their understanding of us being inferior. And it's that courses through the minds, I think, still of white people, and consequently, you get a similar result, although it may be softened somewhat, but you get a similar result as you got, back in the day, like when we were kind of bonded and changed and so forth. And it's okay. So you ask yourself, okay, like Red Lang clearly was an example of how we were treated in ways that basically said, well, you know what, you're not worthy of receiving like a nice house. You're not worthy of being in a nice neighborhood. You're not worthy. You're not worthy. You're not worthy. On and on and on and on and on. So that that right there is like a pattern. It's a pattern that's occurred and been changed just in different ways to maintain like the same level of mentality or consciousness that white people had relative to black people all along. One of the things that really kind of like I've had a number of history courses and this kind of thing, read a number of history books, and one of the things that still surprised me, like to this day, was the book. I mean, not the book, but the motion picture that came out called Hidden Figures. And most of us probably have seen that by now. If you haven't seen it, you should. Hidden Figures. And basically, I was kind of shocked in a way that, not shocked, but surprised in a way that they actually told a story of how, like, these female scientists who actually were instrumental, like in sending like the spaceships up in the sky, up in the space, and had it not been for this one in particular, like I think it was Buzz Aldrin, one of those astronauts, would have burned up. Had she not figured the correct calculations for for the angle of that capsule to come back to Earth and without burning up. And along with that, as well as like figuring out, like the when they then introduced, IBM computers, they figured out how to actually pair those, to the information they needed for space travel and space. So that there's another group of black ladies, who did that. And I was saying to myself when I said, "Oh my goodness! See, this is stuff that if had I known that growing up, like as a young person, that would have made all the difference in the world for me in terms of this kind of like not feeling ashamed, like of black people, my own people." And say, I didn't openly admit that, but like internally, that I think settles, with a lot of black kids, that they feel somewhat compromised, by the fact that they were told that we were told that we were inferior, and not directly, but in so many ways, just by their behavior and the way they treated us. Say, you're inferior. See, that comes across very strongly. Now, so here we are. In a situation where now they're saying, well, okay, we're going to change the history books now so that we can't talk about slavery because like it'll make white people feel uneasy, feel guilty. Well, you know what? Yeah, you could do that, but not going to change the reality. A reality, that's already occurred is something that if you don't recognize it, we will. And as a consequence of that, we'll continue to kind of progress as quickly and as fast as we can based on the knowledge of who we are. See, that's the difference. We'll know who we are versus not who you told us we were. And that to me make all the difference. I remember just one other quick story. I remember when I was in elementary school. There was this teacher. They all meant well, nice white teacher and all, but small school. And one of the things, that we had like a period where we actually sang songs, and one of the songs that we sung was like Stephen Foster, I think was the writer of those country songs or Southern songs, was Old Black Joe. And I was in a segregated school, integrated school. And the teacher wouldn't have us sing. I want to go underneath my desk when saying, I'm coming, while my head is bending low. I hear the gentle voices calling, oh, Black Joe. That wasn't no inspiration to me as a black person. That pissed me off, to be very honest with you. And it did, like other. But that was just one example of how, there's no real intent there, like to create harm or actually cause us to belittle us or anything like that. That was their reality. Saying that was their acting on their reality, but it wasn't mine. And it wasn't other black folks' reality, see, but they just assumed that it was, and everything's okay, so not. So anyway, my goodness, we probably could talk on the subject, for days and days and days, because there's so much that happened. Particularly during the civil rights era and this kind of thing, which I grew up in, by the way, and it was probably one of the great migration of black people heading from the South to the West, to the North, and to the East, after World War II. And that was an experience. I was, I guess, about 3 or 4 years old, but I do remember, very well, coming to California from Louisiana via train, and so yeah, it was quite an experience.
So when you got to California, from what you recall, And so when your family got here, can you kind of explain your experience here in terms of like when you moved here? Was the neighborhoods integrated a lot, or were they still segregated for the most part? I've heard stories where black people wanted to buy in certain areas and they couldn't because it was kind of like this underwritten kind of agreement between like other white people that they wouldn't allow certain non-white people in these areas. Can you kind of touch on that?
Well, yeah, yeah. When it hits you right in the face, but like to begin with, like coming out on the reason we came from Louisiana to California in the first place is because like back in the early 40s, wasn't work. My father couldn't find work, to support a family. And there were 9 of us like in the family. Well, what is about 7 of us at the time, but eventually our family became 9. And so he was coming looking for work. Other people had come to California, and that was during right towards the end of the war. And there's plenty of work like in the military bases, this kind of thing, for in different parts of the country, of the state. And so someone wrote back, one of his friends wrote back and said, hey, there's work there in California, y'all come on out to California. So okay, my father took the advice. He went first, got a job, worked at the naval base, as a matter of fact, it was the CB base there in Hueneme, California. And he wrote back, hey guys, come on, I got a job and I got housing for you. The housing, as it turns out, was a military Quonset hut. That's what we first moved into. I mean, that was a level of segregation, that existed then, because we couldn't really, well, first of all, couldn't really afford, like a house, itself. But that was what was available like at the time, and we gradually moved into like better levels of housing, as we gained like a little, I guess, financial stability, at that time. But so then the segregation in California, at the time was just as severe sometimes as in the South, but they would do it kind of like undercover. Like I remember when I first started shopping for a house. We had been in California for several years, and I moved to a little small community, agricultural community called Saticoy, and it's basically agriculture, and we did agricultural work. That's what my father did, back in Louisiana, and that's what he was accustomed to. So we became agricultural workers too, me and my siblings, and so. Went to school, Ventura High School, and then shortly, like after that, I got out of high school, a couple of years in junior college, and got really tired of that routine. Really didn't see a way out for myself. So I said, well, you know what? I'm going to start taking civil service exams and see what I could do. So I got the exam to be a fireman. I was a city fireman, the first black fireman in the county, Ventura County, and surprised a lot of people. But what happened there was that I saw myself really, I guess, in the same situation from a segregational standpoint there as I had been, like in every other aspect of life experience in California. Some of the people were very nice. Don't get me wrong; they weren't all, but then some were very, very, at least very, very subtle. In some ways, not so subtle, and their discriminatory comments, and kind of things that they will allege me to be. But I got to give all the credit, to my boss. Henry Gustafson was his name. He told me, he says, look, I know some of these guys, might give you trouble, but don't hesitate to give me a call, and I'll fix that. And he was right though. He's really very straight. He was a white guy, very straight, and but that didn't last long. After 6 months, I was drafted into the military. and it carries, like when I got drafted in the military, the unit that I was in was the infantry combat unit.
Real quick, appreciate your service. I'm just saying I appreciate your
Oh,
service.
yeah, no, yeah, thank you, appreciate it. But what happened was is that like as an infantry unit, about 50% of our squad or platoon was black, and I was infantry. I mean, that's one of the places. Infantry is where you what they call boots on the ground. I mean, you go out and do the dirty work, and essentially search and destroy. That was their mission, and that's what we did, in Vietnam. But so anyway, when I got back out of the service, I experienced firsthand, like discriminatory practice in housing. Reading the people, oh, there's an apartment available. I had to move to Oxnard at the time because that's where I was had the fireman's job, and so well, okay, you have to live in the city limits in Oxnard. So okay, so I started looking for a house, or apartment in Oxnard, and I would look at the newspaper, find an advertisement, and I get out there, and the man, oh wait, we just rented it. I'm sorry, too late. That went on and on and on and on, and so I had stayed with my sister who lived in Oxnard at the time for a while until I could get a place, finally get a place to stay. So live and well. I mean, like the segregation just live and well. It came like in a little different, a more subtle form. But segregation by any other name is the same thing. It's the same. So, excuse me. But yeah, no, and then in other kinds of ways, like when I got back from the service, the some of the people were very, very cordial and very receptive, and others, like this one idiot, like I had the newspaper reporter came out and did a story because I was one of the first black people to come back from Vietnam alive. That was, and the story is in there, had my picture and so forth, and I was reading the newspaper. I went back to my job as a fireman. I was reading the newspaper, and this one fellow fireman, he had blacked me out with the ink. He blacked all my eyes out and everything else, like on the newspaper, showing like a what do you call that? Yeah, well, yeah, just kind of blacking out all my features and everything. And that was just kind of like a passive aggressive way of saying, yeah, you black, I'm white, and you don't matter to me. So I looked at it, I shrugged it off. And there are other more subtle forms, like, hey man, like, what about let me train you to be a boxer, and you can go and win these championships. Now, wait a minute, how you know I even know how to box? That kind of thing. What about me training you to be a boxer? This kind of thing. But yeah, stuff like that, and all kinds of little stuff. They would play little tricks, to kind of make me look bad, essentially. But anyway, I weathered that. And the experience, like here in California, was like I would say mostly positive because I'm a positive type of person. I try to see like the bright side, over the bad side. But sometimes, like the dark side really just kind of like holds you down, and you gotta be honest with yourself, and call it, where you see it, like in an honest way. So you do get kind of bogged down and trying to decipher, what direction, is the right direction to go in terms of like feeling your way through life and being, and it was always taught by my parents, to be honest, be fair, and that flowed through me, and all of my siblings too, as far as that goes. That flowed through me like as a conscious way of living, and so it was a difficult thing, to actually try to process life. When you had these conflicting type of images and interests, like permeating you, like your every, your waking state of being, So, but through it all, I made it. I'm very grateful and very, very thankful. And we haven't really moved that far away from those times where I guess racism was looked at, in a way that people felt as though they didn't have to do anything about it, or felt as though it was okay.
One more question.
Sure, yeah.
to wrap it up. I told Ms. Davis that I, have a few words with her. But I appreciate your time, Ms. Davis. So one quick question about the Vietnam War. My dad's friend recently passed. Well, not recently. I think he passed away in about 5 years. He actually had a tour or so forth in Vietnam as well. And he told my father's name is Leslie K. And Mr. K told my dad that one of the things that the Viet Cong, is that correct?
Viet Cong, yeah, huh?
That the Viet Cong were actually telling black soldiers that basically, what are you doing over here? That your country, basically, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know the exact words, but basically that the United States isn't treating, black people very well, and, this isn't your war. Did you have any of those experiences? Did you hear about that? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that kind of was prevalent. Those kinds of thoughts was prevalent, and I don't know whether they're exaggerated or not. But my experience is one whereby, like, if people are shooting at you, they're not going to be your friend, and you're going to be shooting back, and if in cases, where, you were, say, maybe mingling with not the Viet Cong themselves, because that was the avowed enemy, Viet Cong. And then there are the Vietnamese citizens, like in South Vietnam. Most of the Viet Cong were sympathizers, with the northern half of the state or the country. And they were the ones, that would probably make that kind of a statement, and largely it could have been propaganda, and I think there was some truth to it. I've heard a number. It never occurred to me in my experience there, but I've heard other veterans say that they were treated fairly, or let me put it this way, didn't get shot because of the color. But I'll hasten to say that when you are fighting war, you don't try to be that specific in terms of who your enemy is and how you're going to treat him. In other words, if you're, it's survival, and that is the primary reason for both sides. They want to survive, and if you're shooting at them, they're going to shoot back. Real simple. But if they get out of, say, like the battleground area, and then, like, you get in more of like a kind of like where you can actually philosophize a little bit and try to rationalize, why you're here, what you're doing, who you're fighting against, this kind of thing. Then, if you have time, you can do that. But for the most part, like on the battlefield, that doesn't occur, because like if you're ambushed, someone's, you don't really have much time to think, or you're reacting. You react, as quickly as you possibly can, because if you don't, the consequences you might not like, but it could be very catastrophic, in some cases death. So you would react out. So, and to answer your question, I don't know whether I can give you, a specific case where that happened, but I've heard other veterans say that they were approached that way. In other words, the black veterans, they're approached the way, hey, look, why are you fighting, us, you're being treated poorly in your country, yet you come over here and, you want, invade our country, this kind of thing. But again, that for me anyway was hearsay. I didn't experience any of that. But what I do know is that the war was a political war, clearly. Everybody can recognize that. And the people who were over there, at least the people who went over there when I did, really didn't have like a ideological enemy in the Viet Cong. We went over there because they told us, that was our enemy. Long story short here. When we left, I left Fort Riley, Kansas, with the 1st Infantry Division. And when we got about 1 week out at sea, we took a ship, a troop ship over there. one week out at sea, they told us, where we're going. We knew all along because we suspected all along. They didn't tell us. They made it official and say we were invited by the sovereign government of the South Vietnamese, so blah, 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 whatever that was. And we knew that, but we didn't have like I'll put it in common language, didn't have a beef against anybody. What we were doing and experiencing was, okay, we were soldiers and we had like an allegiance to our country, and that's what we were expressing. We were expressing our allegiance to a country and a responsibility that at that time that all young men ages of 18 up had to register for the draft. We did that and to serve the country. We didn't make the decision, and we probably would have made it differently had we made the decision, but everybody can't make their own decision based on what they want to do. See, so that was mine. That was my thing. This is what I have to do because this is what I was called to do. And under other circumstances, hopefully they would have been different, but they weren't. So, yeah. So I don't know whether that fully answers your question or not, but I'm kind of scattered in terms of really kind of understanding it myself. Because in some cases, that was something that was floated out there. I didn't experience it. I'll put it that way. Yeah.